She felt, okay, he moved from outside to indoors. He's suggesting something. In my defense, to prove that what happened was not consensual, I called my bishop. I was victimized. My marriage to my first wife was a total disaster. Just a bit of background in terms of the story, which led to me being raped, right? Some would not call it rape. So I lived in an area called Market, right? It's on the south coast of KZN. I had a colleague of mine that I lived with who was perplexed by the idea of a young man, seemingly good looking, but had no interest in pursuing or being attached to a female companion, right? It confused him. And you'd see in some instances when we would go into a shop, he would try organize a partner for me under the assumption that when he's done the groundwork, I'll then just continue and plant and then reap the rewards, right? Obviously, I was averse to that behavior because church taught us, even with colleagues at church or with fellow church mates, we're not allowed to hug them because when we come close, then there won't be any gap for Jesus Christ, and then the devil would pick in, do a bit of peekaboo, and then he would tempt us, and then we'll start getting involved in deplorable social activities, right? So he spoke to a girl. The girl, I think, must have been around 16. I was 20 at the time. He spoke with her on my behalf and obviously proposed love to her. He was a proxy. He was apparently sent by me, according to him. So the girl accepted the advances. And then he said, the Easter weekend is going to be going home. I'm going to be alone. So I would like to prove our love to each other. He then said to her, I was a bit shy, so she must understand and be patient. But the goal was to prove that we love each other, right? The idea was dual in the sense that he wanted to prove if in fact I was a complete male. And on the other, he wanted to make sure that whatever social prescriptions of what a heterosexual male were, I also was heavily enmeshed in such, right? She agreed to a visit, right? So it was a Saturday, she visited me. So as we're listening to music, I'm sensing that the energy is changing because from the sitting arrangement, we were sitting outside because I did not want neighbors to assume that I'm one of those boys, right? So the sitting arrangement starts to change slowly, okay? I pay attention, but pay no particular mind to it. And then I suggest to her that as soon as the sun sets, I would like to go inside. So it was a two-edged sword. The gentleman needed to prove that I was male. The lady also wanted access to social capital. We only had one chair in the room and a bed, right? So as she's sitting on the chair, I slid into the bed. Before long, I think it was a spur of the moment thing, she slipped from the chair. She was now seated at the corner of the bed where I was seated. I could feel a hand moving where my feet were, right? And I tried to pay no mind to that. The idea from my own assumption was, if I pretend to be sleepy, then she'll get the cue to leave. She felt, okay, he moved from outside to indoors. He's suggesting something. After the hand gestures, the duvet of the bed moved slightly and she complained about feeling cold as well. And she was like, no, I'll just stay this side and I'll warm myself a bit. But because I had not rebuked her when she started the touching movements, when she got into the bed, it moved from the shoulder, it moved to the chest, and from the chest, it went to heaven, right? Shocked as I was because I was not aware of what's happening, right? And my body sold me out. You know, when your body sells you out, like you're having an out-of-body experience. And obviously, as a male person, when you are stroked the right way, right, your mind is engineered in such a way that when you stroke the skin, it almost and immediately leads to particular something, right? And obviously somebody was enjoying the fun, right? Because the soldier was ready for war. The woman could not stop herself because the mission was prove that this guy is not gay. Number one. Number two, he's already proposed you. So whatever you do is consensual. Okay, the first time it happened, I think it ended around 7-ish because I think at the time I was more shocked than excited. And then instead of her suggesting that it's late, I would assume that she would say, I'm also not happy about what just took place, right? I'm still shocked. I look like a zombie. If I could just take a picture of myself back then, I look like a zombie. I froze for hours, in fact. I did not know at the time that after the deed is done, then you have to cuddle a bit, right? Okay, so she cuddles and, you know, I'm sleeping like this and she's cuddling. The hand is over here and I've got my burglar guards on. She slowly opened the burglar guards and again somebody betrayed me and then something happened again. But what was funny about that story, in my defense, to prove that what happened was not consensual, I immediately, it was around 5, I called my bishop at the time and I had to relay to him steps of what happened, what day it was, what was the weather like, how this happened, why it happened, how do I feel about it. And then obviously at church I had to be excommunicated because it was a practice. If you've engaged in riotous behavior or you've done something that angered God, you had to distance yourself from pious activities. I think I could have had an opportunity to resist if I had socialized with my peers long enough to understand, because obviously peers, I think, are in the habit of always sharing what takes place in their own individual lives. I never had an opportunity to be a normal person, right? So I would not have known what advances, what steps, and what outcomes would happen if you're in this scenario. I think I would have resisted because one, it would have tainted my plans of going to serve the Lord. Number two, it would have forced me to engage in something that I felt I was not emotionally, psychologically ready for. This also emanated from the fact that my father was forced to become a parent at a younger age. He had to prove to his siblings, he had to prove to his family that he was man enough. So I did not want that burden, right? Had I known better, I would not only have resisted, but I think the moment that she walked into the gate, I would have asked her to go back where she came from if I knew better. I don't think I was in a right state of mind to accept that this is actually happening. Because the moment when I froze, it was almost an indirect consensual behavior or action to her to say, it's a step of approval. Continue doing what you're doing because I'm not pushing her away. And the lady assumed that because the soldier has carried its gun, it means we must go to war. When my workmate came back, the first thing he asked me was, how does it feel to be a man? Perturbed by this question, I'm assuming, but with no factual evidence to say he must know something. Okay, and then I asked him, what do you mean? I've been a man. Because I was shy and I was embarrassed because I just told my bishop at church. He then says to me, you're gonna be a father like me. He had 5 kids at the time. I had no kids attached to myself or my name. And then he says to me, but if you are scared of having a kid, morning after pills are going to assist you. And I asked him, but what are morning after pills? Do you mean to tell me because we copulated, there are chances that I may be a father? The frame of reference that was in my memory bank was my father, the experiences he went through, so I'll be forced to be a father. I won't pursue my life and career interests that I had. And for me, father also meant responsibility. It meant protecting, providing, and all those things. I was not ready for that. I was still young. I had not even dated properly to understand. So then the colleague of mine suggests that we get morning after pills. And I begged her to take it as I'm standing to witness that indeed she was taking it. And then she asked me, okay, what are you going to give me if you want me to take these? And then obviously I had to put money in as well to motivate her to take the morning after pills. And the gentleman that I was colleagues with is indoors in the house. He's enjoying himself. The movie is playing out. He's peeping through the opening of the door and the wall that balanced the door, and it's just like, it was not something that was new to her. I'm judging this because of obviously the advances inside the house. That's one. Number two, in the morning when I accompanied her, she was not regretful of what had taken place. There was no sign or evidence of remorse. To her, it was, wow, we did it. Now, to avoid a repeat and a perpetuation of this misnomer, I did not want to live in the area anymore. The day that he had taken a day off was the day I relocated. And when he came back, the room was empty. He only found me at work, I think 2 days after, when he came back. And then he says to me, I now had to pay her. She took the pill, by the way. He doesn't mention which pill it was. There's no way that he would have details and go as far as doing things like paying the girl without asking for my permission, or be updated by the girl of when she took the morning after pill, unless he knew and he had a hand in it. My thing when I met him first was to protect him at all costs. Now, when he does something which is in stark contrast to what I had thought our relationship was premised on, my losing my status at church, my potentially impregnating someone and being a father at an early age without being economically independent, was the highest form of betrayal. For me, it made no sense to still be in the same space as that individual. Indirectly, unbeknownst to him, he even motivated my relocation from KZN South Coast to Pretoria. So I did not report any of this to the police at the time because, one, I did not want my parents finding out, because the assumption they had was he's going there to explore his gap year. Now they discover that I'm now sleeping with girls. The first thing they would have asked me, are you aware that there's AIDS? Because I had references from my own family of people who died of AIDS. So I did not contact the police. I felt that when I spoke with my bishop or pastor at the time, that was enough. My life centered around church. So confession was largely touted as the standard of piousness and righteousness and what have you. And after having done that, I again felt betrayed by the church, because I would have assumed that if you listen carefully to the story, you would see that I was victimized by machinations that were beyond my control. But now, when it came to church and the bishop further validated what everyone outside of church had done, said, and projected toward me, I assumed that they would have at least organized some bit of counseling. Instead of just chopping me off from church, I did not talk to any of my family members. So I did not feel that I trusted them enough because they were not church members. And I felt that they misunderstood me for a great part of my life. I do not feel that any rape victim ever comes to a point where they accept that they've been raped. When somebody violently or manipulatively takes something away from you without you having given consent. I never wanted to be associated with a female from a romance point of view. But now, whenever I would distance myself from females, gay guys would assume that because they've not seen me with a female, it meant I was a closet gay. So I was now chased by gay guys because it was against my principles as a Christian, right? I believe that Adam was for Eve, not Adam for Steve. I felt that that victimized me anew. It further put a stamp on my existence as a person not being accepted by other people to a point where I was suicidal. I dug my third grave. I decided to get married at the age of 20. My marriage to my first wife was a total disaster. I deprived her of intimacy. I deprived her of healthy communication. I deprived her of normal behavior that you would see amongst or between people who are in a romantic relationship. Because I assumed again that she came from church, she would know that I was a victim of, but I did not tell her that I came from that background because I felt ashamed about it, right? But it affected our marriage to a point where I did not know how to relate with her. And again, I dug my fourth grave because I now became a repeat victim of abuse. Now it became physical abuse. I also did not know what to do, right? That's why I was very, very suicidal because I felt the only option left for me is just to die. Now, with the first marriage, whenever I would complain to church about the wife who was abusive, church would always tell me to carry my cross, just like Jesus did. When I would go to the police, they would say to me, she's probably hitting you because you're not a stallion in bed. But at the same time, I'm excusing the wife because I'm saying the wife surely was not the creator of my psychological state. When I left the marriage, I just upped and left. I became a professional escape artist. I just escaped. And then the next year I got married again. The first marriage begat us a son, and the second marriage also, we conceived 3 kids. So I now have 4 kids. My mind is playing tricks on me because I was never abandoned by my parents. A part of me is engrossed in this hero syndrome. I want to save my kids from myself. But how do I detach myself from something that I want to save? I can't be a proxy hero. I need to be active in their lives. With my second marriage, I could not have a relationship with my kids. I was afraid that I could perhaps impose my victimhood onto them. Number 2, I was in a conundrum because my second wife did not want to be married to me. She only felt the need to help me transition from being a victim to a normal person. But I misunderstood that as gestures of romance. And in my own warped sense of thinking and reasoning, I assumed that I owed her something for saving me from the first marriage. I pushed the idea of marriage because I again felt that because church always emphasized that you're not supposed to date unless you have an end goal in mind. So she was troubled because at the time she had her own childhood lover who had just come back from outside the country, who had been studying, and they wanted to pursue their relationship. She felt guilty to leave me because she felt that it would be inhumane of her to leave me in that state I was, or I would relapse. But at the same time, she wanted heavily to go to that person that she was endeared to, right? So now she also was at a crossroads. It was such a strange and funny thing because after this power tussle took place, she eventually mustered up enough courage to leave me. 2013, she left me. And then in 2014, she wanted to come back because she also perhaps reasoned that we can't do any justice to these kids. They were not there when she fell for that guy but accepted my advances. I was not there when I allowed her into my life and then almost cajoled her into accepting that she needs to be a part of my life. Also, we couldn't parent because we came from different backgrounds. She came from a family where her father was a strong male influencer. I came from a background where my mother was a strong female influencer. Unfortunately, it also led to a divorce. The ex-wife felt that in order to protect the kids, she needs to starve me of attention. Cruel as it sounds, then it made sense because I had about 8 years that I was absent from their life. We would talk occasionally on phone when she was excited again, or maybe one of her boyfriends had dumped her. For 8 years, I fought for my kids until in December 2021 when they visited me. When they visited, they came and expected that I'll be this monster that they were told I was. The picture that was painted of me was very grim, but when they experienced a different side of me as a father, they then decided the following year that they're not going back to live with their mother. So they chose to live with me, and I've been living with them since 2022. I had a sister who committed suicide in 2014 because she came from an abusive relationship, right? Our paths were parallel. I too was experiencing my own. Had society, had the male people in my life, had church, had police, had community members, understood that I was a victim. Possibly my life and my choices and my outlook would have been different. I would not have still operated as a victim and expected people to pity me, but I think I would have owned my situation and internalized everything and then chose to tread a different path altogether. I started sharing my story because I felt that the time has come for me to understand that my healing is just as important as people listening to the flowery tales that I embedded within my story. But most importantly, I do not want my kids to be victims of what I could have chosen differently and what society sometimes imposes onto us without understanding that some behavioral patterns have lifelong consequences. It's more about my kids more than me this time around.